I'd like to call this meeting to order. A meeting of the Plan Commission on Monday, October 11th at 6:30 p.m. in the Germantown Village Hall boardroom. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with Wisconsin statute sections 19.83 and 19.84 in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for discussion and action. Roll call shows all members present except for Mr. Kimler and Mr. Williams. Mr. Kimler is excused. Perhaps Mr. Williams will be joining us shortly. There he is. So just Mr. Kimler is absent and he is excused. Next item on the agenda is public input and public appearance on all items except for those that are on a public hearing. There's no public hearings on tonight's agenda. If there is anyone in the audience or has joined us via WebEx that would like to participate in public input or public appearance, please make that known at this time. Anyone? All right, then we can go to the approval of minutes from the September 13th, 2021 Plan Commission meeting.
Move approval as presented.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the approval of the minutes? No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. That then takes us to new business, starting with new business item A. Poblocki Sign Company, LLC, agent for Freighter Health, Inc., property owner of Freighter Germantown Health Center, located at West 168, North 11237, Western Avenue, a sign review application. Give us some more information and background on our new business item A. We'll turn the meeting over to our associate planner, Emily Zant.
Thank you. Poblocki Sign Company, the agent for Freighter Health, is proposing 2 new wall signs, replacement ground sign, and 1 replacement directional sign for the Freighter Germantown Health Center located in the northwest corner of Mequon Road and Western Avenue. So the proposed ground sign is a 5-foot 7-inch by 8-foot tall, double-sided, internally illuminated polycarbonate cabinet with vinyl graphics to be located in the southeast corner of the property. The sign cabinet will be placed on a almost 3-foot tall masonry base. The proposed ground sign will replace the existing ground sign in the same relative location, which again is in the southeast corner of the property. The ground sign will need to be modified to relocate the address coordinates to the masonry base. A landscape plan is required to be submitted for the ground sign, which meets the 3-foot minimum landscaping on all sides of the base. And the ground sign needs to be located at least 5 feet from all lot lines. They're also proposing 2 wall signs, which will be internally illuminated as well. They're polycarbonate cabinet, and they'll be located on the west and east elevations of the building. The village sign code does permit wall signs on facades with road frontage unless approved by the Plan Commission. Staff does support signs in both locations on this property. And finally, the proposed directional sign is intended to replace the directional sign which is there and can be seen in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. This is a 4-foot tall, double-sided, non-illuminated aluminum post and panel sign to be located on the south side of the access driveway off of Western Avenue. The existing directional sign is located within the Western Avenue right-of-way. On the right-hand side of your screen, I've shown the right-of-way with a red dashed line and a small yellow circle where the existing directional sign is located. If a new sign is installed, it must be located outside of the road right-of-way. However, if the existing sign remains in its current configuration and location, the face of the sign may be replaced. A sign face replacement can be approved administratively. So it's staff's recommendation to approve the proposed ground wall and proposed wall and directional signage, subject to 4 conditions. One of those being that if the new directional signage is installed, it needs to be outside of the road right of way.
Move approval as presented.
Made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? Trustee Ball.
Mrs. Zant, what is the village regulations for all these directional signs? The reason I ask is I was driving through the shopping center the other day. The amount of directional signs that one business has was incredibly immense. I know we approved it, but this sign started me thinking about what is that ordinance? The entrance sign, when you plow the snow, that 4-foot tall sign is probably buried in a mound of snow. It's not visible most of the year. What's our ordinance on that? Signs.
Well, we provide for on-site directional signage. We don't have a specific limitation on the number of signs. We do have specific requirements or limitations on the size and the height, type of material. Principally, we don't restrict the number based on each site is different. May want to have signage that directs somebody to around the backside of the building, and you may need to do 2, 3 signs in order to do that successfully in the eyes of the property owner or the business operator. So from that standpoint, we haven't really limited the number.
Okay, in a 2,000 square foot building, how difficult is it to find the drive-through? If it's not where I can see it, it's got to be on the other side of the building.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That's where when there were 30 signs in one lot, simply telling me where the drive-through was on a 2,000 square foot building, it got a little carried away. So that's my only problem with this one is, do we really need an entrance sign as to where our entrance is? There's only one way to get into the building. There's only one curb cut.
Well, and they do have the only one directional sign.
This one, it's only one, but I even took exception to that. That's all I have to say.
Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Next item under new business is item B, Community Development Department 2050 Land Use Plan Update and Community Workshop Schedule for discussion. If some more information and background on this new business item, I'll turn our meeting over to our Community Development Director, Jeff Retzloff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You just get situated here. A couple of handouts I had on the dais for you. I printed off portions of some of the graphics I'm going to be going through on the screen, principally the neighborhood district corridor map, and also the matrix, the land use matrix that goes along with the map between those two components that comprise effectively our future land use plan for the village. And then a second handout just for reference. It's a listing of our residential zoning districts, or districts that provide for single family and other residential type development. And it's intended to just simply show the lot size, the minimum area required per dwelling unit, and the density. So as I go through some of the discussion tonight and we go through the matrix, I thought this might be helpful to so you can relate to what the current zoning districts are that would provide for the type of development and densities we're talking about. As I indicated in my cover sheet, the consultant has provided draft chapters for portions of the plan document. They are under review currently by staff. We're going through them. I'm going through them for identify any corrections, new information. I think there's some things we're going to need to update, principally because we now have census information that's available, since some of this information was pulled together last year. The other reason I want to distribute this tonight was just to give you a sense of direction where we're going with the document itself, in terms of its format and the presentation. The goal, as you click through the chapters that were distributed, you'll see that it's heavy on graphics, charts, maps, photos, the like. That's the intention, is to try and make something that's a little more eye-catching, keep everybody awake when you're reading through it, but hopefully not include unnecessary information. That's another goal. The current plan has a lot of boilerplate, some information that really isn't necessary in order to satisfy the statute requirements. But at the same time, there are some statute requirements that call for information that frankly isn't very usable. So we're going to work with the consultant and try and identify some of that information that we can leave out. So ultimately, the goal is to have a shorter document in terms of the number of pages, and also one that's, again, graphically oriented and actually usable as a reference document. I mean, I don't know, frankly, how many of you members bring your current 2020 plan with you for reference. And we do have one around here somewhere, I'm sure, in case we need it. But frankly, we want to make the new document more useful as we go forward. If you have any comments on what you see, please feel free to send those along tonight, after tonight, or any time going forward. It would be appreciated. Again, we're moving towards having our next public meeting number 3. The goal at this point is to have a nearly completed draft with most of the important components available for public distribution in about 4 weeks, so that we can then have a public meeting, ideally no earlier than mid-November, no later than early December. And that would be, again, for the presentation of a draft document, but more importantly, a presentation of the key components of the plan. And that's principally the future land use, which is why I'd like to go through tonight start going through the neighborhood districts and corridors themselves and really go through them one by one. And it shouldn't take too long, but to go through and just verify for everybody the boundaries that we've identified, check and confirm the list of uses, the desirable, the allowable, and the undesirable uses that go along with each of the NDCs. And then also, and maybe more importantly, just go over again and confirm what we're talking about in terms of the maximum allowable densities allowed for residential development in the future under the plan. And that's where this chart over our existing zoning districts will probably come into play. My hope is that we can get through the neighborhoods tonight and then wrap up with the districts and corridors at a special meeting on the 25th of October. And frankly, the important districts, we've developed some plans, scenario plans already, so that too shouldn't take too long. But going into the public meeting, I want to be comfortable and have all the members comfortable knowing what's in the plan and what's being presented. So when we do get questions, and I know we're going to get questions, and we're going to get some pretty interesting comments, I'm sure, too, about some of the proposals that we've got with respect to our 2 opportunity areas that we're identifying in the plan, the Holy Hill Gateway Corridor, the Village Center District. And then also, I think another key component is what we're planning for in terms of future density for residential development in the rural preservation area. So with that, I'll just jump into what I've got on screen. And what I'd like to do is I'll go through the neighborhoods, beginning with the first one on our list. And if you like, you could follow along in the handout. The matrix is a nice handy reference for that, to see what's proposed in terms of the land uses and also density. The first four residential areas, the Sunbury Treetops neighborhood, the Spazlin neighborhood, the Altbauer neighborhood, and the Kinderberg neighborhood, they comprise sort of the heart of the village in terms of residential development. I brought it up on screen. It's the four yellow areas right there in the middle. The largest concentration of residential development in the village. And we've broken it out into four neighborhoods, each associated with, or 3 out of the 4 associated with a village park. And Sunbury, the general characteristics are, like all 4, single-family residential development in the RS4 and RS5 district, which is generally the 2.2 dwelling units per acre to 2.9 dwelling units per acre. And that's described in this section of the NDC chapter under the general character. And the matrix shows that the preferred land uses, whether or not it's an environmental corridor, whether it's in the sewer service area, and the type of residential site design, and then also the density that would be allowed, the maximum density for any areas within there that are currently undeveloped. And so if you look at the matrix, it shows existing uses are allowable. Single-family residential is desirable. Residential 2 and 3 family is allowable. Multifamily, commercial, mixed-use commercial, and industrial, all undesirable. Commercial activity center is shown as being allowable, along with institutional. And chart here, open space and residential or recreational would be allowed. As far as future development, residential development in the Sunbury Downs area, any areas that are undeveloped at this point would be allowed to develop in that 2.2 to 2.9 maximum density allowance, which is essentially our RS4 and RS5 districts with 15,000 to 20,000 square feet per residential lot. So essentially no change effectively compared to what's currently or what previously exists in that district, the Sunbury Treetops. And the same holds true for the Spazlin, the Altbauer, and the Kinderberg neighborhoods. Now, if you look closely at the Sunbury Treetops graphic, and I'll bring it up here. Down at the intersection of Pilgrim and County Line, we have the C, the Activity Center logo. The intention there is to identify, and I think we have 6, 7 activity centers highlighted in various locations throughout the village. They're intended to allow for future commercial development at or near that intersection. Some cases, like this case, there's already some commercial development in the area. So whether it be new development or redevelopment, that would be something that would be permitted. For example, there actually is an empty commercial zoned lot on the west side of the Cousins restaurant. It used to be an old barn. Cousins redeveloped the site. They did it in a manner where they could come back at a later date and add a secondary multi-tenant commercial retail building. If in fact they wanted to do that in the future, that would be something that would be permitted under the plan. So that's where the commercial activity center allowable use comes into play. And you'll see that also, for example, on the Spazlin neighborhood. Here, it's basically the office area. right along Division Road as it winds and curves around to intersect with County Line. Now, there is no more developable parcels at that location, but again, the intention is that if it were to redevelop with something more commercial or retail, in addition to the offices there, that would be permitted under the plan. So does anybody have any questions at this point with respect to, I'll just lump them all together, the Sunbury, the Spazlin, the Altbauer, and the Kinderberg neighborhoods?
Southeast.
Spencer, isn't that where the condominiums are?
Circle in
There, believe there is some RS5 and even some RS6 possibly. If you like, I can try and bring up the zoning map.
It's gotta be fine.
Is there a concern about future redevelopment? Just curious.
You've got, Dave, what you said is we're limiting this area to RS4 and RS5. This is clearly the next one. It's 6.
With 12,500 square feet minimum lot size? It could very well be. Do you, can I ask the question, is it that we would want further future development to be at that same level?
Is it? There's nothing left to be developed in this area, so it's, but when you get into another area that has RS4 and 5 and then a spot of RS6, is RS6 not allowed to be developed in another area?
Get
Well-
average of the residential area.
That's what I'm trying to understand for future consideration. I don't want to get,
No, frankly, at this
Yeah.
point, the way that it's written is that the maximum allowable density would be that 2.9 or the RS5 district. And I guess it's a good question. Because it's a question that came up with the current plan many times over the last few years, particularly with Kinderberg Estates.
yeah. And
The
that came
current
in.
plan said, basically the wording was something like an overall average for the neighborhood of X number of dwelling units. So arguably that could allow a higher density than the 20,000 square feet.
Yeah, and when that Kinderberg came in, this is the area that we were looking at and saying, we're matching what's in the area. Just trying to get clarification so that when the next one comes forward, I know what to tell people again.
Well, and it's a great question because we need to decide what we're going to do. I mean, frankly, we go through what we went through with Kinderberg Park, Kinderberg Estates, I should say. And, was the current plan that allowed for an average, was that too confusing? Some people thought it was being manipulative and trying to, use the wording in the plan to one's advantage. In the end, things were scaled back significantly from the earlier proposals. I think we were over 30 lots with one of the original proposals, and
Fine.
yeah. Well, and there is a spot. Here's a place.
Single family home.
Yeah. But there's a portion of the treetops, a road extension. I don't know the short name of that. Actually, it's not written on here. I don't know what it is, but it's intended to be extended into that area.
Sure.
Arguably, we'd want the same density. Now, treetops is I believe it's a planned development district, conservation subdivision that was done many, many years ago. Do we want to add language in the plan that gives us the latitude to take into account what the adjacent or adjoining density and zoning are for greenfield type development like that?
I would say yes, going out to 2050, because that land could turn over by that time.
I think it makes a lot of sense to do that, but at the same time, it could lead to some confusion. I think the one thing that I know we need to do with this neighborhood district corridor concept that we're pursuing is create individualized neighborhood plans that go beyond just the basic neighborhood district corridor concept that we're presenting here. And what I'll use as an example is the Holy Hill Gateway area and even the Freistadt district, where we've already done, it's one of our, the consultant termed it an opportunity area, where they went ahead and did a more conceptual but more thorough assessment and analysis of what types of land use should go there, where future road extensions connections should go. And it's that level of detail that I think is worthy of something we should do for every one of the neighborhood districting corridors over time.
Sure.
Almost like after the plan is developed, we set out a schedule. We'll tackle, maybe one or two neighborhood districts or corridors at a time over the course of a 3 to 6 month period, work with the Plan Commission and develop and take a closer look at what's undeveloped, what has redevelopment potential, and create conceptually a more detailed and thorough plan so that we can say to anybody who comes in, yeah, that piece south of the treetops, we intend that that's going to be single family development and a conservation type subdivision approach with a density no more than whatever it is around there. It's RS5. 2.9.
I can see that. And then in this particular, they get credit for the conservation land already out there, or does it have to have its own area of conservation land?
Being it's part of the neighborhood, I think it would be included. What's already there. Going to break it out by neighborhood.
That's a good question. I assume that, because the village didn't have any specific requirements for a conservation subdivision, for example, we're talking now about having a specific requirement that also includes you need to have a minimum 30-40% open space. When this area developed, it didn't have that. So it was sort of an internally driven percentage of open space. I wasn't here at the time, so I don't know if there was a particular percentage that they maintained and whether or not they're over that percentage. Thus, you could, this development of this open area could get credit for some of that. I think those are sort of wandering into the weed kind of questions that we'll have to answer at some point.
When we get into designing that, laying that out, we make that determination at that time.
Right.
Want it 10 more houses on that property, or do we want 8 more houses and some more open space? Determined.
The overall driving land use type, single family residential, and the density would be at 2.9 as a maximum. Now, I would point out with regard to the Sunbury, the boundary, you look to the east, to the right, there's a little notch out. Crimson Road extension is located. For those of you that have been around for a while, Crimson Road doesn't actually extend to 145 yet. The right-of-way does, but the road hasn't been constructed. This property was owned by church many years ago. They had a site plan that was approved, eventually fell through, and we've considered development proposals over the years, some multifamily, apartment, higher density condo type developments. You name it, I think we've had somebody come in, maybe not get as far as the plan commission, but somebody's come in to talk about it. Under this plan, this area is included in the, what we're calling the Victory Center corridor. And when we get to that, we'll talk about it, but the Victory Center corridor is an area that we would allow higher density residential development. You look at the matrix, it's on the the first sheet. It's the very last corridor. If it's developed with single family, it's shown as 2.9 dwelling units per acre maximum, or if it's multifamily, 8 units per acre maximum. So again, while we're not going to talk about the Victory Center corridor in great detail tonight, it's an example of where we're right on the border of a neighborhood that has some issues over the years with regard to what that area is to develop. Right now, we're showing it as a part of the Victory Center corridor that could develop with a higher density residential, as opposed to including it in the Sunbury neighborhood and limiting it to single family. Oh. Emily just pointed out that the zoning for Ridgewood, is it all along Ridgewood Lane? It's the RD2, it's our 1 and 2 family district. Frankly, I don't know if there are 2 family units in there.
Remember?
I don't think there are.
They're all the 2 families are. Interesting.
I would point out there is I think there's an error in the matrix for the Altbauer neighborhood. Like the Sunbury neighborhood and the Spazlin and the Kinderberg, Altbauer does allow a maximum density of 2.9 dwelling units per acre for any undeveloped land. And there are some tracts that are undeveloped in the Altbauer neighborhood, generally west of Division Road. Includes that section west of Division and north of Donjas Bay. Currently, the landscape Wendland Nursery operation. Then north of that, up to Lilac Lane, there's a couple of 2-3 parcels just north of the village's stormwater basins there. I don't remember the name of that subdivision. It's here, Wildflower.
Willowwood, yeah.
Willowwood. Yeah, those parcels there. So those are really the only undeveloped parcels in the Altbauer neighborhood. That's the error that needs to come out.
Just, I remember discussing something about in the northeast corner, the intersection of Pilgrim Road and Mequon Road, possibly allowing that mixed-use commercial residential there. One point, I think we discussed that in that kind of intersection area. No, Pilgrim and Mequon.
It would require redevelopment of Vienna Court.
I think I could support that. It seems to be in line with supporting a commercial district along that stretch.
Well, at this point, we've sort of redrawn the lines to exclude that from the Village Center District, which is the red area. So unless there's a strong desire to pursue that further, add it back in. I don't think that beyond that, there's the need to add any commercial or recognize it as an allowable use in the district or the neighborhood.
It's not a strong opinion.
I mean, I think it would take a significant amount of effort to redevelop that particular corner.
Sure.
I mean, we've talked about redeveloping the intersection as part of the Main Street, not the Main Street, but the Village Center District improvements to make that sort of a focal point at the intersection with the gas station and the bank right across the street. But at this point, even the scenario plan that the consultant put together didn't include the Vienna Court area as a redevelopment site.
I have a couple other questions, I think. I generally agree that all four of these neighborhoods are pretty similar and that, they should be consistent within this graphic. If I go over to the right, under preferred site design, there are three options there. Do we want to have more than one desirable option listed there? I kind of feel like we should have one desirable and the others could be allowable or undesirable, but not sure if that would be helpful to a potential developer if there are two desirable options in that.
Are you saying maybe we should have all three as being allowable?
Well, if there's one that we feel strongly about that we do want to encourage, make that desirable, and if there's a site design that we definitely are not in favor of, we make that unallowable or whatever the use stands for. But yeah, the default would be acceptable, I guess. So.
Frankly, I don't feel strongly one way or the other as far as the site design preference. I could see listing all of them as certainly allowable for Sunbury, Spazlin, Altbauer, and Kinderberg.
Why is Kinderberg not acceptable for conservation? The other ones are, and they're more built out than Berg is.
Yeah, that's a good question. It probably should be changed to either desirable or allowable. I mean, if you look at the area that's left in the Kinderberg neighborhood for development, we're talking about that 40, 60 acres right at the intersection. And knowing that it's full of environmental features, there's wetland that meanders throughout the entire area there, it makes sense that a conservation subdivision approach would be an acceptable approach. So frankly, I would, if we were going to put anything there, it might be desirable.
Uh,
Of the other development to the east, the Highlands? Chills, that's what it is. That's not conservation, is it? It's just traditional neighborhood.
It's traditional neighborhood, but it has a feature that would be typical in a conservation. It's got that outlot with the trail and the stream.
Behind Nelson Drive.
Yeah,
Yeah, Nelson Drive, whatever.
sort of a combination. There's some drainage in there and there's also the sidewalk.
I'm not sure if that's really a conservation subdivision or we have a creek that's running through there that you can't build around.
Right.
Side ditch, Jefferson Ditch. But in this is a good example where along Pilgrim Road, if I can acquire the properties north of that 40 acres at the intersection, I could redevelop that whole thing. Would you prefer, would it be more desirable for that to be a conservation subdivision? Or would you rather extend the fabric of a traditional neighborhood? That's where I could see it's desirable to do either one in that space. So in some cases, it is desirable to have two things, depending on the area that you're in.
Right.
But you could do your traditional up to that midpoint line in Kinderberg and do your conservation below it.
Again, both of them are desirable still.
But I would
That's
think
all
you
I'm-
would match the fabric of the neighborhood above with the traditional, and then you have more of a blank canvas below.
That's, so both technically are, desire a conservation down at the bottom. I desire a traditional fabric up above. So there is why I would have two that are desirable. Because this neighborhood lends itself to both of them.
But don't you think that you would more desire a traditional neighborhood above and accept the conservation at the same time? To say that we would rather have a traditional there, but and the conservation one is acceptable, where anything below that, you'd flip it and say that the conservation would be desirable and the traditional would be acceptable.
You're argumentative tonight, sir.
Okay, so
We still got more things to fight about.
all right, so we don't need to change anything other than make the U a D for Kinderberg.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions about those four? Sunbury, Spazlin, Altbauer, Kinderberg. I'll throw this out there. Anybody feel strongly one way or the other that we should consider some sort of commercial designation at the Pilgrim Donjas Bay? Can we lay that to rest? If it hasn't been already.
I have no desire. I don't know what the rest of the board's thoughts are there. On
Next
the
page,
ends,
block up, section up and
Right,
down.
you don't need it there.
Doesn't need to be at every intersection.
That's correct.
Okay, and what about Donjas Bay and Division?
Got it at the major intersection at the bottom, major intersection at the top. We don't intersection.
Okay. All right, then let me move on to through Spazlin. South Country Air is the name. Interesting neighborhood. To the west is the portions or the eastern edge of the village center. To the east is the business park, the Germantown Business Park. The purple, blue is the north part of the Victory Center corridor. And it's an area that, while it is within the sewer service area, not everything is served by sewer.
Those.
Two train tracks going through it.
Train tracks running through it. Right now, what's listed is single family and allowance and multifamily with a commercial activity center at the intersection of Country Air Drive and Mequon. It's somewhat of a carryover from the previous plan that had a large swath of the south side of Renwood, which is on the north side of Mequon Road, west of Country Air, that was classified as commercial. And we declassified that when the PDD was adopted for Renwood. And the developer said, I don't have any need for retail. And I think the general feeling was we didn't want to extend it any further east. So frankly, I don't feel strongly one way or the other about leaving this commercial activity center here, but we should talk about it. The land that's available is northeast quadrant of the intersection, about 10 acres.
Available, it's actually for sale, or it's just not developed? yet?
It's got one single family home on it,
It's not developed yet.
not developed yet. I believe that's Miller property.
But that's not even in this neighborhood.
It's across the street.
Right, but I'm talking about in terms of the commercial. If we're gonna put any commercial there, it could go at any one of the
Okay.
remaining or available quadrants. And, if need be, we can identify which one it should go in. If all three, then all three, but if none, then none.
Don't we, right now, kind of, I think where I grew up, right, there was always green space, so all the commercial development wants to go in the green space. End up with this area that's less well-developed, that nobody wants to go into anymore, because now if I go in there, it's gonna be expensive, I have to redevelop it, it's not conducive to what I want, it's too much parking area, too little parking area, whatever. By not having this as a commercial area, activity center, wouldn't we kind of be driving some of that more towards our city center, so to speak, where we'd rather have development rather than let it go in this kind of this green space, just kind of sprawl? You know what I mean? Because it seems to me that what we suffer from is good quality retail, commercial space right in the center of the village. If we just let it go all around the village, that's where it's naturally going to go, because that's the least cost. Master planning this stuff, but I could easily see people or businesses saying, I want to be there, rather than a more thoughtful approach, center of the village.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, the whole goal of the village center concept was to try and encourage, foster a better, higher density development residentially and better commercial, more unique type commercial.
Do you allow a gas station up?
Close to a well.
Don't see it fitting, because I'd rather have it, again, push more into the center. Plenty of gas stations, but I can see somebody wanting to put a gas station there because you're the first stop.
Can't do it. There's wellhead protection.
Right. It's a theoretical question.
Right.
That wasn't.
I agree with pushing it towards the center. I don't see commercial here unless you're looking at commercial as professional.
That,
Yeah, even that,
I'd rather push that into down.
Yeah, I think you're right on that edge of, because the next major one over is you're already over towards, the Eisenhower and Forest Drive, and then it's Wasaki Road. So I'd rather drive it this way than to spread it down that way.
You need either of those two.
right, we'll talk about that one too. If you want to talk about it now, and we can. It's another carryover from,
I don't see commercial happening there.
Like we've been
And
saying, I think you need to
To
reemphasize,
drive it inward.
reemphasize putting commercial back into where we district.
okay, so we should get rid of both of those activity centers.
Yes.
Sure, we'll have the landowners disagree or possibly, but we're really trying to create a core or what's considered a downtown district.
What else would you do in South Country Air?
It, frankly, it's kind of in a no man's land,
Yeah.
according to Tim Zimmerman and the whole sewer system. It's the hole in the donut where it's very difficult to serve, given the existing facilities and their depths and that sort of thing. Tim indicated to me a while back that, for example, any development in that area, what would be north of Fond du Lac, west of Country Air, east of the greenhouses and south of the railroad, there'd have to be a force main put in to pump that to the nearest point, which is further south.
Because it's high ground.
Yeah.
Because it's high ground or low
I
ground?
mean, it's,
Everything goes downhill this way and then it goes downhill this way.
Force main to get water.
Talk about up in this area here,
Oh,
here too.
this area.
it's a difficult spot to get. It's not currently served by sewer.
But what do you have it as? South Country Air neighborhood?
South Country Air with single family, desirable, and it does show as an allowable 2 and 3 family.
Multi.
Do we have updated statistics on our single family compared to multifamily?
There's some information in one of the chapter 2, I believe, that talks about the percentage. Yeah, but it based on, what what do you include in the definition of multifamily? Is 2 family included? We're right around 25%.
It's 25%.
Yeah.
And that's for,
It is, but I can bring it
Some
up here.
people include senior into that number. Some people include 2-family into that number.
Some people acknowledge or recognize the,
there's 25, up 1%.
it's about, yeah. Trying to find what, it's in chapter 2 or 3.
At a seminar and they described it as much less than I.
Should have marked it. I don't have it. There's language in here that actually compares Germantown to other communities around us. And we're higher than some and we're lower than others in that elusive multifamily definition. Yeah. I'll make a point of. But we do have some parcels in here that are suitable for future development.
Yeah. And I've got this area, there are several lots that are really nice homes that bought large lots to put a nice home on. Much older homes that
Somebody who just purchased.
that's one lot now? It's two.
It's in the trees. It's just west of the water tower. It may be two. You're right. It's two, but they're both very long, deep. They run almost to the back or to the where the railroad curves around. But there's. They have a house that's set way in the back. There's kind of from Mequon Road, it drops off significantly. There was an issue with some drainage there a few years back. That's an area that could be developed with some single-family lots. In fact, I was told at one point by a developer they were looking into acquiring that property. Where that went. But there's development potential in this neighborhood, and I guess the question is, do we just want to let it develop single family wise, consistent with sort of the 20,000 square foot density allowed in adjoining areas, or do we want to actually allow some higher density development?
I would get it west of Country Air, be an extension of the fabric in east of Country Air. Could be higher density because you are right up against the business park.
You're running it all the way up to Victory Center?
Victory Center all the way up.
No. Your east and west demarcation of high density versus residential.
Yeah, I'd just take Country Air left. West is east. It's the triangle red zone. But I got 3 lots in there that are state lots, which doesn't fall into blend.
It's kind of a tough call because the way it's currently developed piecemeal with relatively smaller lots up front, right on the road, and then there's open areas behind.
Challenge.
This area predominantly, we're kind of talking about redevelopment as
Yeah.
opposed to any new development.
And in redevelopment, you cannot afford to redevelop with single family. It's just too expensive to buy. Try and sell it. That's why I think density has to go in there. Density on there.
Yes, particularly given the sewer situation.
Sewer situation, I think you're gonna have to go that whole area, higher density, just to pay for any type of development that may happen.
Like with all of the neighborhoods, districts, and corridors, allowable, the existing land uses are allowable. So one thing we need to keep in mind is when people question us about, well, I live in this area and you're showing it as something different. We're not suggesting that somebody's going to take or acquire your property and redevelop it. It's intended for some long-term use, that what's currently there will be allowed to continue on as is until they or future owners change their mind, want to redevelop. So we're taking out the commercial activity center at that intersection and any parcels from it from the South Country or neighborhood. Do we want to leave the density, the far right column, the density column? It shows maximum of 2.9 single family and 4.3 units for multifamily.
I think it can go denser than that. Where would you put row housing?
You have residential multifamily as undesirable.
Well, yeah, we need to change that.
Currently on there is that, but is that what we really want now that we've had a discussion about the area? Is multifamily really undesirable there? My belief that when you get into a redevelopment scenario, you're going to do a denser housing system. Whether that's townhouse type development, small multifamily, it's not gonna go single family. Developer could afford that. Somebody's house for a premium, tear it down.
So if we plug using the current zoning district classifications, our multifamily districts are RM1, 2, and 3 that allow 6, 8, and 10 units per acre. We also have the RD2 district, the 1 and 2 family that allows 2 family units.
I think you'd be better up until almost 4-family max. And if you want more dense multifamily, you got to go south on 145 where some of it already exists.
Sort of like the condos on the north side in Renwood, north of Mequon Road, just across the street.
Mm-hmm.
See that?
That gives respect to the neighborhoods on the other side, even though they're on the other side of 145, it's still more of a single-family residential component, but you're not putting 3- and 4-story multifamilies across the street.
Where do townhouses fit in our little matrix here?
Well,
Like 4 or 4.
arguably, our matrix in our current zoning districts are very limiting. We have the one RD2 district that allows for 1 and 2 family homes. I think it needs a thorough going through and some change of terminology.
Because I have seen areas like this in my past where a developer came in and bought this entire area, just leveled everything, a higher density, but they were all townhouses, side by sides. Nicely done, well well appointed. But I'm not sure what density that fit on our chart here.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there may be some missing pieces that we're not going to be able to fill in at this point in time. I mean, frankly, we're going through a significant change in housing, just generally speaking.
Plus that area is tough. I mean, it's tough topography. You've got some railroad tracks and, I mean, you've got a house that actually sits between two railroad tracks back there.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, well, people don't like to live that close to an active railroad. That one is somewhat active. Have a fair amount of established single family on the east side of Country Air from where it breaks off of 145 and heads towards Mequon Road. Those houses have been there for a while, probably since the 60s, I would think, just looking at them, styles. They're more well established in regards to the acreage that's around them or what they sit on. So that would be, I mean, to transition those people out, you'd have to probably pay a little bit more, or you'd get it through attrition.
It's going to cost you more money than a green field is. Therefore, you need to place it, if you're going to down, place it with a higher density that can spread that cost over
Right,
more.
but you've got an area in the middle that you can't do anything with, because you've got pretty much of a significant wetland corridor you can see.
That one.
So you're either to the north or to the south of this is pretty wet.
Yeah. That's why I think
And it
that,
goes high and it goes quickly down from here.
Yep.
And then it kind of heads up a little bit as it goes back up towards,
I think the discussion about the fourplexes, townhouses, Redwood development be an acceptable placeholder for this area.
and this slope's pretty significant. From this point to this point is a pretty significant drop.
Yeah.
Isn't that where that drainage issue was?
Yes.
Through that farm field?
Yeah.
And now you have somebody that's purchasing the lot that's next to Business Park, which is predominantly higher, on a higher ground, wooded,
Heavily wooded.
and it's got the bowling alley style dimensions to it. So that'd be another pretty significant change. I mean, looking out to 2050, possibly. But I don't have a problem with reaching up to side by side or 2 to 4 family.
Okay.
Anything more than that, I think you got to go where it already is. I think you'll have that neighborhood come out if you're putting.
Yeah, if you're putting in an apartment building, I'd say no to that, but if I were to put in a townhouse development, several things side by side, that could be an interesting neighborhood, an interesting community.
A lot of topography issues you'd
Yeah,
have to get
and
over.
that's why neighborhood, side by sides could work. They can step down the hill.
I mean, everybody'd have a walkout.
Yeah.
You even have to create it. I mean, it'd be right there.
So then do we change the residential single family from desirable to allowable and make 2 and 3 family residential desirable? And maybe even the multifamily, make that desirable or allowable at a minimum, right?
Residential single family, I think, would be a residential 2 and 3 family is allowable. Residential multi.
Where's the desirable? What do we desire there?
Where do the fourplex condo,
Yeah, what is that? Is that,
It'd be like your 2 and 3 family, wouldn't it?
is it?
I was thinking.
yeah,
Okay, then that's what I would say is the desirable one. residential, mixed use, mixed family, senior, no. Mixed use, commercial, residential.
No, because we just took that C out.
So
Well, actually, that comes under the two more columns over, doesn't it? The commercial activity center?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yes, well, I don't see this as being mixed use, commercial, residential.
no.
Or
Trying
industrial.
to stop the commercial from expanding. Mixed use, commercial, industrial. Expand industrial out that way. The flower place wants to grow.
Further up. You're
Yeah,
in
it
the,
says right there.
it's in the red.
In the red. If they wanted to grow, could they buy some of the, could they buy down to the H in south? Expand their business.
It gets kind of wet.
Yeah, they're also kind of on a dome.
Commercial includes activity center that,
In fact, for all those neighborhoods that have those commercial activity centers there, we're making that undesirable, correct?
Yes.
And then what about open space recreation?
sure,
As desirable or as
No.
acceptable?
acceptable.
I mean, as a sort of rule of thumb, we've got desirable for open space and recreation and
All the
everything.
way. Okay.
As you can see, it's the only column that's entirely green across all of the neighborhoods.
What's the reality of that thinking? If somebody wanted to buy a portion of this land and turn the wetlands over to the village for more green space. Thanks, go ahead, give it to us, we'll take it. Or we want to carve out a section of this to have a park here because there's not enough park in this section of the village. See, that's the difference between desirable is I want to carve out a park in here, or it's allowable if you want to donate some land to us, we'll take it.
So just philosophically, A versus D for open space and recreation should be in every neighborhood. It's allowable, but not necessarily we want it. I mean, desirable suggests that's what we're pushing for by 2050. We want it to become this.
Yeah. Desired in every neighborhood to have something. In this case, the neighborhood is so small. Parks
Right up the street.
quarter mile away. Do I need to be? Get some other trustees involved in that conversation and we'll have.
It's an odd, I'm gonna say it's an odd area. It's difficult.
Yeah. Challenge.
I mean, at one point, I think we even talked about including it in the red as part of the extension of the village center, but that didn't make a lot of sense. Can't be part of the business park. Could be part of the corridor, the Victory Center corridor, but. All right, so we'll increase the density allowance, we'll take out the activity center, commercial stuff. We'll move on. Prairie Glen. Prairie Glen neighborhood. Characterized by a large environmental and navigable waterway right through the middle of it. South of the developed features.
What is the east side of the north end that?
Prairie Glen is also a PDD, but I think it's RS5. Emily's looking it up.
Don't see it going residential 2 and 3 families. See the top end staying single family, but the bottom end, we've had 2 proposals come through for that to be higher density.
Residential, but none while I've been here.
Been here longer than I've been here.
Yeah,
I've
Uh,
seen 2 of them.
for the former Belinsky property?
Yeah. Ski actually came in with. Section between Donges Bay and Wasaki Road.
Yeah, it's a slope.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yes. Belinsky owned the property many, many years ago.
Depis.
Yeah. Nepius brought it in.
They proposed single family, and it never flew. First proposal, I believe, was at a time when Belinsky was having some financial difficulties.
Wasn't it also questionable in regards to how they acquired that land from that person? That woman, or is that in a different area?
No, that was something else.
Okay.
Couple that bought that carved out piece, they had problems getting that land. They couldn't, and it was tied to the main field. Whoever had the legalities to it wouldn't sign the papers to sell off that piece. Although the deal to sell the house was already done, couldn't divide.
Right, but it was all done quote unquote illegally.
Yeah.
This piece right at the by dividing they recorded a quitclaim deed, but what they should have done is gone through the village and the rezoning process, so they, in the end, that small piece was, the zoning was agricultural.
Yeah.
And then it just sort of cascaded, it was a mess.
Yeah.
In fact, it still is somewhat. Because the most recent, the current owner started running a business from it.
Who did?
The current owner. Hollande.
So based on previous proposals, I've seen that southern part to be high-density residential, the northern part, a continuation of the fabric that's established by that existing subdivision, because there was a plan that curled that road back down and took over those 3 lots. 3 or 4 lots up there. I don't know. The dark green? The dark green in the middle of the whole thing can't be developed. There's a waterway and it's all wetlands. That's where all the geese come out.
No, that couldn't be done. Now, as you can see, the area to the south, we call the Omega Hills District, which is an area that this plan is intended for future industrial type development. So it's kind of an interesting spot to be in. I mean, it's at, call it 30 acres right at the intersection. Topography is poor. It's affected in large measure by the business park to the west. We're going to encourage similarly non-residential type uses to the south of Donges Bay.
Doesn't lend itself for much of anything. doesn't lend itself for large commercial buildings like are in the business park. The grade is too steep.
Right.
You need a bunch of small buildings. That would be the residential.
I mean, it makes some sense that it would, depending upon what density we allow, that if it's like a conservation design approach, or maybe even just a higher density, single family, multifamily, fourplex kind of thing, where you can cluster the homes.
Yeah.
Make a good condo development where you could cluster the units, you know, to the south and to the northeast, with almost two separate cul-de-sacs, one off of Wasaki and then another one off of Donjas Bay to the north.
Kind of like what's further south on Fond du Lac there. That Seven Pines and the
Yes,
county line.
yeah. So right now, we're showing it as desirable for single family, allowable for residential 2 and 3 family, which frankly, I think that label should be 2 and 4 family.
Multifamily senior.
So we're taking off the desirable for the single family in this neighborhood?
As acceptable.
The single family?
No, residential multifamily senior.
A nice senior community go there. Not sure I would.
Yeah, for one, yeah. I would think so.
Really, senior residential wants to be as close to business district as you can. This is the edge of town. It's the farthest away from business district. It doesn't lend itself to the needs of.
No, and you go further east into Mequon, it's very low density residential.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, existing units acceptable, single family residential, I would say acceptable. 2 and 4 family is what I would desire there. Residential multifamily senior is undesirable. Desirable. Commercial activity centers,
That would be reference to that Mequon Road,
that's undesirable.
taking that out.
Institutional is. Green space is highly desirable. We want it there. You just gotta wear boots.
Down low, yeah. Trip going down.
Okay. The next is the Friedenfeld neighborhood. Which is interesting in and of itself. The lion's share of it is within a sewer service area, but not served by sewer. Areas for development, redevelopment are principally in the far east along Wasaki Road up to Elm Lane.
The neighborhood sentiment is larger single-family lots. Argument that was brought forward is lots are 3-4 acres when in parcels in there, but 2, 3, 4 acre parcels. So it's all that way. I'd say 1 acre larger.
Really?
Subdivisions came out. Expansion down
Yeah, north of Elm Lane, it's all Harvest Hills, it's 1 acre. And
That's- and that was
Woodland
the-
Ponds, 1 acre.
That was the fight that these people all put up is that's what we want over here. We don't want. See.
Are large, relatively large and undeveloped.
Been on the market for 25 years that I've been here. Yeah, it's sad that that sign's been there
The
forever.
diocese owns it.
Yeah, they do. Some,
They've been holding out for some sort of commercial development. And every time they come in, I mean, we've had inquiries over the years from commercial to industrial. And the sewer ends right at Mequon Road coming out of Prairie Glen. And it's all set up and intended to be extended to the north. Which is what we told Jerry Grosnick when he wanted to develop some land. He wanted to split off a couple parcels initially and then have the rest sort of pre-planned for like basically a half-acre lot subdivision. And we got to the point of saying, well, you'll have to extend the sewer. And then conversation sort of broke down after there.
yeah, he's got a plan showing both his parcel and the parcel at the intersection. And in one concept, he wanted to sell off his first 3 lots fronting Wasaki Road on his current parcel with private drives onto Wasaki. I didn't think that would fly with the county to have that many driveways that close to that intersection. And his second foray was a actual subdivision with 1 drive lane coming out that connect to the southern parcel, 1 large subdivision, connect up to Westview Drive, but there is no access to that cul-de-sac.
No, there's not. There was nothing reserved as far as like an potential right of way through there.
So could I see it going half-acre lots, sewer and water? I could see that. Are you gonna have that whole subdivision out here again? What's their opinions again?
Well, what we're showing right now is for the areas that are non-sewered, would be 1 to 2 acre lots would be allowed single family. That's the 0.5 to 1.0 units per acre sewered.
Okay.
And then for sewered, it would be up to 2.9 units per acre, 20,000 square feet, half acre lot, sewered section.
But it's always been planned for Seward.
Right.
Just telling you the sentiment of the neighbors.
I think you need to go with the plan for the Seward.
Yeah, I think you need to be denser if we're gonna put sewer in there.
I mean, there's limitations as far as how far that sewer can go northward. You know, Elm Lane is the limit as
Right.
far as the sewer service area. There are a handful of parcels south of Elm Lane, north of the Grossneck property that arguably could be served by sewer as well.
So,
But the whole area off of Forest Drive and that Crestview and that, those are all septic and
Yeah.
wells.
Yeah.
'Cause
well and septic with an understanding,
fail.
septics fail.
I don't know if that's the understanding.
I don't know that that's the understanding either.
You have to bring it in.
Well, I'm certain that none of the new people have that understanding. Some people told me that story years ago.
Well, you know, the So I think the way that it's listed, it makes sense.
I'd leave it.
Plow through Pheasant Lane, sewer and water through along Crestview, all the way to the cul-de-sac.
As I recall, there is not much other than a 10-foot span of land that's got those two separated.
It's obviously part of the plan. And it also is looked at as an east-west possibility to offload traffic from Mequon.
Yeah, many years ago, the DOT started a corridor study for Mequon Road, and they eventually abandoned it before they finished it. But they had come through and were looking at identifying restricted access points and anticipating a future 4-lane divided Mequon Road, and so therefore where we're going to put cross streets and intersections. And one of the things they were pushing hard for was the village to deal with this particular situation and somehow connect, Pheasant to Crestview all the way over to Wasaki to do just what Dean had suggested, is provide a parallel, road for traffic to circulate without having to go back out on the Mequon Road.
More logical solution was Elm, which we,
Still be done.
But it still can be done.
2050.
It's not a done deal. But realistically, when you look at it, that segment of Elm Lane over to Country Air, on the north side of the park, is still a possibility. That whole area is going to be served by sewer. The west part of Harvest Hills has recently been acquired. We actually have an application for a certified survey map to divide that some 50 acres, I think it is, into 2 parcels. But we would require the right-of-way dedication just the same, so the pieces will be there. Could be put in place to extend Elm Lane from Country Air to Wasaki.
So do you want to leave the density as it is then?
yeah, for all the area, yeah. As long as we got that 2.9 acres, yeah, this eastern side needs to be the 2 point. And you actually run that sewer, loop it through Elm Drive.
Good. And then the undesirable becomes the commercial, includes activity centers, because we've removed it. Okay. Is that why it's yes with a star?
The star
asterisk.
actually means that it's in the sewer service area, but it's only partially served. The lands in there are not all served by the sewer.
Okay.
The next one is Woodland Ponds, Harvest Hill neighborhood.
Bob?
Yes, there's some land between. is sort of the 1 acre density as being the only suitable type of residential development, single family on 1 acre, 1 to 2 acre lots. Yeah,
0.5 to 1.
Woodland Ponds, Harvest Hills, it's all 1 acre RS3. Now the stuff to the north, which is
Right. No changes there. Okay.
brings us over to Renwood. Calling it the Renwood neighborhood, unless somebody else has a better name for it. We're gonna stick with that. I mean, it could be country or north. But it's predominantly got Renwood development. And this is an area that, again, is going to be available to be served by water and sewer. Wood?
Yeah. 100 places where 6 feet of it's ripped.
I don't know.
Covers are. Check with Larry on Monday.
Larry would know. I wasn't aware of that. It started grading for the north part of Renwood. But we're showing, you know, consistently for the entire Renwood neighborhood development in that up to 2.9 units per acre, which is, you know, the Renwood predominantly is the RS5, single family area in Renwood is RS5. There was some proposal by the developer at one point to lower the average lot size to 12,500. We tweaked, I think, the lot width, gave them some latitude there, but we didn't budge on the RS5, the minimum lot size. They are, yes.
South.
They originally had permission to put in up to 36
I don't remember that.
condo units, but they only put in 18. Well, that's a good question. Do we, you know, apart from the condos in Renwood, do we want to accommodate similar type of development, higher density?
Bringing the sewer all the way up to Freistadt Road. Therefore, you want to utilize that sewer system. The density to pay for the sewer system.
Future maintenance of it.
You know, one thing I keep thinking about every time I look at this, all of the discussions and arguments we've had over the years about lot size just come racing back to my head. And it seems like as long as I've been here, the notion of going with a lot size less than 15,000 square feet just has not been acceptable, really, anywhere along the process.
So
Stone Creek.
that's an anomaly.
There's a handful of anomalies, yes, but when push comes to shove, I mean, maybe Kinderberg Estates is too fresh and too painful. Where all of those discussions came forward about, you know, is it RS6, RS5, RS4, what's acceptable or not? And frankly, lot size, probably not the right measure necessarily, even in those discussions.
Well, that was a seminar I was at earlier late last week was the county's efforts to put in a smaller, denser housing program. Is there a space for that? There is a market for it. Space for it.
Well, realistically, if Germantown is interested in providing more affordable housing, I say that not in quotes, affordable housing.
That's the problem.
It's terminology.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, because we can have some really nice attached, single-family housing.
Look at what Mequon is doing with their pocket neighborhood, what Thiensville is doing with a pocket neighborhood. These are very tight, small lots. They're $500,000 homes. It's not, in that aspect, it is not subsidized, it is not low-cost housing. It is just an alternative housing structure that meets a need of a certain demographic.
Right. And we've experienced this ourselves. Even we might want to push for and encourage housing that our kids can afford to move into right out of college. But the developers seem to be, driving the bus. I mean, look at Kinderberg Estates.
Yeah.
We were told the lot and home packages were going to be in the $350,000 to $500,000 range. You look online right now, go to realtor.com or any one of those sites, and you dial up the lots and the home packages, and they're selling in the mid 600s. I would venture a guess that and those are 18 lots, if we would have allowed the 28 or the 30 or the 33 or whatever there was, the home package and the price probably wouldn't be drastically different.
No. Could put this Mequon development in there, $500,000 a house.
So I don't know if, when we talk about providing for or trying to encourage housing that people can afford to live in, is that the market that's for us?
Well, that is a philosophical question based on the economic data that the Washington County
Economic Development.
Economic Development, they came and did that presentation on what our village is missing.
Oh, that was the extension.
Yeah, the UW extension or Washington County extension?
Washington County extension.
They came and presented an argument that we are missing the 20 and 30-year-olds in our community
Right.
because they can't afford to be here.
Right.
It's the young kids who are the last children of the baby boomers that are still hanging out here and the baby boomers. We've got a large disparity. And what I'm hearing is, well, it's because we don't have the housing stock that they are interested in. Have the Whitestone Crossing high-end, highfalutin apartments, and we don't have single-family homes that are in the price range that they can afford.
6 or R7 lot.
So we probably should be looking at higher density, single family, zero lot line, whatever you want to call it, type of development that will still have a hefty price compared to others, be more cost affordable than what's currently out in the marketplace.
The argument I was making at this discussion, it was, I think we're getting off track, but you can build a 1,000 square foot home, house and lot package for the $250,000 price tag, but you can't dress it up with all the amenities that you have in the house that your mother's living in. Yeah, Maybe I can't have the fireplace. Maybe I can't have the built-in cabinets. Maybe I can't have the crown moldings. Maybe I can't have. To get to the price that you want, is that then considered affordable housing? It's got a bad connotation to it. So where do you go with it? It's a bigger discussion, but
Well, clearly, county executive in Washington County has some plans and is in the midst of his,
countywide tour.
yes. And I think there's a workshop coming up later this month about that. So there's a lot of information that we need to take in, but I don't know that it's going to be something we can realistically address entirely in this plan because we need to get this thing done.
No. And in Renwood, the Freidenfeld people, the Woodland Ponds people are not going to accept that in that area. You're going to have both areas coming out.
We did have somewhat of a contentious just on the RS5 that was coming in there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And when we even tried to explain that it's the MacArthur Kennedy neighborhood that's coming across the railroad tracks, that wasn't even acceptable. So
Right.
you're not going to get this other type of denser housing
Not there.
in here.
It's already planned anyways.
Yes. And as when we talk about the districts, when we talk about the Village Center District, the Freistadt District, even the Holy Hill Gateway, where we've already had some further conceptual plans developed that show and how we could accommodate some higher density residential along 41 and replicate the Whitestone Station and other similar types of development. I think all of us would agree to some degree that's a logical thing to shoot for and a logical location. But there's still an argument that we're going to hear that that's not appropriate for Germantown.
Yeah. You're always going to have somebody coming in and saying they don't want it. Not in my backyard.
All right, so right now for Renwood, I think,
Where you didn't have the fight though was Blackstone Creek.
After the 8th time through here,
But it was probably it was considered a test site for a lot size of that size. Especially along the frontage of Park.
well, it had such a unique concept for this area at the time. It was going to be a golf course community. You know, the original marketing
Yeah, the
was
original plan
high
was, yeah.
end,
Being 2007 marketing.
right? Duplex condominiums, people driving their golf carts from their house to the tee box.
$450,000.
Across from a high school.
Yeah.
And then slowly, it just, all sorts of factors played into that having to evolve into something drastically different than what it was originally marketed as.
But nobody came out against it. The only person that was a little bit against it was Jeff. Based on it was a new standard for that area.
I was against Blackstone.
Not when we went to the smaller lot sizes along Park.
Yep. Right backed up against the high school are the tiniest of tiny lots.
Right, there were the
Single family.
RS7s or whatever.
Well, the whole thing was sort of a,
Hodgepodge.
yes.
Fill it in, make them
Mhm.
get something here. What can they afford?
We went from condos to then some hybrid, it was still a condo, but you actually owned the land around your unit.
Yeah.
To then completely platting what was left of it as a subdivision. So it's really a weird hybrid kind of thing going on.
But it's sold like hotcakes.
Oh, yeah.
All right, next.
MacArthur Kennedy.
Pretty built out.
Yeah. Similar provisions for any future redevelopment. You know, there's a couple of parcels that, arguably could be redeveloped along Fond du Lac Avenue, just off the Brownfield area, south of the school. Property that didn't take off. Really, realistically, it's all built out. So what we're showing is for future density is essentially the equivalent of what's there today, the 2.2 to 5.8 to RS 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, RD2.
Change anything.
Let's try and push through Blackstone Creek neighborhood, which it's kind of an interesting way we've sort of carved this out. We've got the school properties on the west of River Lane and Blackstone Creek neighborhood, the residential component on the east, and that is the area. We're not
Changing anything.
changing anything. The next one is the,
Excuse me. Question.
Yep.
Is there a reason, or the A for Blackstone Creek neighborhood, institutional, that's a green? Is that,
yeah, there's a number of, as you go right where you highlighted that and you go further south, all of those A's, they should be orange and not green.
okay, okay. So
Yeah, there's a problem with the color scheme that we got going on here.
that answers my question.
I'm not sure Craig caught that. Clearly he didn't. I've got some notes here that the colors need to be clarified. The next one is what we call the Goldenthal Homestead Hollow neighborhood. Kind of an interesting area in that it does include on the north side the area in the northwest corner of Goldendale Road and Freistadt. The Stout Farm property, portions of it, the southerly half. When we talked about the Freistadt district and we did up the concept plan, we set aside this particular area for future residential, and then we eventually just folded it right into this residential neighborhood and took it out of the Freistadt district altogether. And the idea was that that would provide some sort of a buffer, and that the right at this point the intended density is in that sort of basic up to 2.9 units per acre, the RS4 single family.
Is there,
South of Freistadt.
there a transition buffer between this and Reichstad district?
Right now, it's the Stout Farm.
Desire to have a buffer between residential and residential before I get to
Yes, I can bring it up here. Not a natural buffer. It would be something that we would have to create as part of the developed features. Residential. And that label's it's subject to interpretation. I mean, right now we're showing it as, again, that 20,000 square foot lot half-acre lot density.
That is in the sewer district?
It, right now, it's not. But the intention is that through 2050, this area would be included in the sewer service area. Also subject to whatever the outcome of the Richfield water sewer extension.
So is that a potential place where I could put those tighter lots, smaller houses, denser before I get into?
Certainly.
Could target it, but you're also targeting a area that is a, fourth or fifth generation family farm currently. And I know it can all change over within, by the time it's 2050.
Yeah, and even down vertical leg red line that goes down to that triangular point, did something denser along there. No, the other side. That side, yeah. Along the red line on that side of the red line. Yep.
Certainly is one of those long, closer to 2050 sort of scenarios for residential redevelopment in the northwest corner of Goldendale at Freistad. It's certainly this particular concept plan, unlike the areas to the north where we purposefully built in these sort of perimeter residential and combined with environmental segments that we are planning for. This is a little raw, obviously, and maybe it needs some further attention as far as, showing that there's a desire or need for a buffer between the residential and non-residential.
That orange triangle is the insurance company. I would just assume all that fabric the same. Low intensity use for that upper orange piece so that the yellow can be the same density as the rest. Have a buffer between those uses aren't as intense. Spend insurance, that use is not intense at all, and I wouldn't mind living some arborvitaes up in my backyard, some pine trees. I wouldn't mind living backed up to that.
West Bend.
Sorry. Please forgive me. Germantown.
So you don't foresee any further development on the insurance parcel? I mean, they've got the nice tree-lined driveway,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of property there.
What I don't see is you may put another nice building out there, but they're not going to sell off to put a factory next.
No, I'm thinking like another
Building like
nice office
theirs,
building, just like
Yes.
the one that's there.
a low intensity, and I wouldn't mind living on the other side of a tree line from that. Whereas the other side of a tree line from an industrial building.
So I'm not following you because I thought.
That's the nursery.
Well, when it gets redeveloped and a user goes in there, I would like to see the intensity of the insurance lot matched on that lot. So a nice looking, low intensity, not a warehouse factory building, but a nice office control structure.
What about the rhombus to the north?
See, I think part of the thought was,
Not a parallelogram.
Oh, you want to go that way?
Yeah.
Didn't know what, I can't see what orange is, it's off the screen. So, sure, if you can do Whitestone Station there, I'd accept that. Then that's, because right up against the interstate, you're gonna need something that's gonna accept the noise, or we're gonna start building walls there, which I am opposed to. Yeah, if we put,
It's got to run along Swaffway.
yes. Well, who wants to live on that street?
yeah, exactly. It says proposed frontage road.
Somebody put a typo in there. Yeah, but let's get back to, Goldenthal, Homestead Hollow. You have that whole district with the fabric it has today. Any more development matches the existing fabric.
So east of Goldendale, north of Freistadt, I forget the name of the subdivision.
Yep.
Dalebrook Drive, Patricia Lane. Those are all relatively small lots that were
Mhm.
developed back probably in the 50s, I think. Do you want to try and replicate that as a future single-family pattern?
That's what I would do.
Because they would be served by sewer at that point.
You need the density to support the sewer.
Okay, so that would be more than the 2.9.
Or a little bit further south.
What's that?
Those are unsewered. That corner.
Some of this is sewer, some of it isn't.
Some still have wells.
Is that the same, are those the same size lots that are up in that other subdivision?
Those are RS4s, aren't they?
There's some RS4, and I think there's some even some.
One?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I was asking. Is the other subdivision we were talking about the same fabric as this, or is that a different size? One up above.
I think the one up above, they're a little bit smaller and they're a little bit older.
I would use both of those, and both of these are acceptable.
There's significant wetland through there, but there are buildable
Yeah,
areas.
you're right. Pretty much through that whole middle section, you can sort of see the green. It's just environmentally sensitive all the way over to the park, county park.
To that whole area, as the fabric that's already there can expand into that whole area. Either one of those.
Okay. You know the name of that? Is that Woodland?
Dan and I live back there. And so does Dennis Myers.
That's right. Woodland Manor. Okay. Can we move on to Amy Bell? Now, the next few neighborhoods, in fact, all of the ones that we're going to be talking about from here on out, are areas that are almost entirely, or the majority of them are outside of the sewer service area. So we've got Amy Bell. Right now, we've got a commercial activity node at the intersection of what's Lannon and County Line or County Highway Q.
Mhm.
We've sort of envisioned and have talked over time about the northeast corner of that intersection possibly being some sort of commercial retail-ish area in association with possibly some residential was one idea at one point. But right now, we're showing that whole area as the Willow Creek, part of the Willow Creek Business District. And as some of you may know, there's a developer who's pushing for us to make some plans and decisions about the northeast intersection so they can proceed with their own plans for development. But with that said, we're looking at the Amy Bell neighborhood, and the commercial activity center isn't intended to be part of this neighborhood. If anything, it would be east of Lannon. So right now, Amy Bell, the whole Amy Bell neighborhood, now was, and despite the development in the southwest corner, I think it's Happy Hollow subdivision, which again it's an older subdivision. They're all on well and septic. They're all around an acre, 3/4 of an acre. Everything else under this plan, the density it's intended to be single family at a density that is essentially the one lot per 5 acres. Unless they develop a conservation subdivision with 5 or more lots, they could get a 1 dwelling unit per 3 acres.
Dwelling units are acceptable, residential single family is acceptable, 2 to 4 family is undesirable, so multifamily. Mixed use commercial, residential is undesirable. Mixed use commercial, industrial is undesirable. Commercial activity center is acceptable.
Yeah, that, I think that should be taken out.
Undesirable?
Yeah. Because the activity center designation isn't intended for the Amy Bell neighborhood.
Real? Institutional.
No, would be unacceptable too. Now, one question that remains to be seen, there's been discussions with the developer who's looking at business park land east of Lannon, north of County Line, right at the intersection. Question was posed to me, well, what does the 2050 plan say? And my answer is right now, it's showing large lot low-density, single-family.
My comment would be yes, even if I don't run it west, I want to loop it back to the north and tie it back in so I have a loop system. Get it to the edge of your property. That matter if he's buying property north on Lannon, should he extend it north on Lannon, his property? So that I can,
That makes sense?
because we have had a problem in the past in this area. Dead end. Water issues.
Right, it used to be a dead end, yeah.
Right by the power plant.
Yes.
So we don't want to create another dead end.
I don't create.
You know, sort of the larger question is, it's for this whole part of the village, frankly, is
What sewer is in the trucks and all those subdivisions?
Shrink this down a little bit.
how much do you want to see?
A little bit more. Looking at proximity to the Golden State Hollow. Sewer could come down to Freistadt Road.
You think
By
in the Meeker Hill?
2050, possibly. Be plowing right through the Willow Creek Wiedenbach neighborhood,
If you are contemplating,
unless you go along Lannon and then hit, like I said, Appleton Avenue.
if you are contemplating water and sewer, not be conservation, density of houses.
Right now, you're
Right.
coming back on Lannon, and the only place you can hook back up would be on Appleton Avenue if you're gonna create a loop. Because that's where your water comes back across Highway 4145 to feed the F6. Then you come down Appleton Avenue, which you already have, back towards County Line again.
When you look
So
at,
you could come off of that and push in to some of these undeveloped areas.
Yeah, right, fringing upon it and then fading out to the, where's the conservation subdivisions belong? Fringes, they don't belong on Lannon Road.
no, but it's conceivable.
Yeah, and that is what I'd say is adjacent to Lannon Road. I could shoot spurs off of Lannon Road to get water and sewer into those areas. Halfway across, so take the G in the Weidenbach neighborhood, take that G and go straight down the east side of that subdivision there. Yeah, right there. Straight down there, east of there can be denser, Because it could get water from Landon Road, take that line straight down through Amy Bell. East side of Amy Bell can get water. West side becomes septic. Yeah,
Or comes down towards Appleton, or gets forced up to through Appleton and across.
get the,
Right, but you could come in off of that corner, Willow Creek and Appleton Avenue and start punching in from there, because you have all this down here. But you gotta stay away from this and this. So it's really the developers here and kind of in through here. So you could create your conservation, I guess, in those areas if you wanted to, but I would,
in those, not there.
why not?
Put water and sewer, I need it dense.
Right, you could put it more dense, but still have part of this as your conservation.
Well, yeah, you got the nature corridor that you're not gonna touch. Spaces that are developable would be higher
Dense.
density.
Right. How big are the lot sizes like off of Hickory and Beach and all that? Acres, full acres?
Half and 3/4? Yeah, some of them are pretty small.
Still
Yeah,
Septic.
for now. I don't know what the history is as far as failures, septic tank failures in there. So it sort of begs the question, do we plan for those areas potentially to be sewered in the Amy Bell and the Wiedenbach neighborhoods?
MMSD does, because they'll push it out to the borders, but I think it starts to feather out that way in more density. I mean, you're not gonna put a bunch of acre lots or 1.5 acre lots. As you go out towards these, I think you have a tighter density in this area.
Where's the next treetops going? The next hills, water and sewer with,
Well, we're talking about extending water and sewer into Richfield up along Holy Hill through that corridor. But when you start talking about this and you think, gosh, Richfield is a 1/4 mile to the west. If we extend into Richfield in one spot, does that automatically mean we're gonna consider doing it again in another spot?
I don't know. That's for that board to decide. I don't see it,
haven't
But,
got that first one done yet.
So,
unless they're gonna give irrigation to Basses, I don't know.
with, with that in mind, do we do what we always say to ourselves when we come across that situation where we think, gosh, I wish the person who was in my position before me had required them to do this? Do we just keep, I don't want to say blindly, but we're working through a fog here. We don't know exactly what the future holds or what it should hold for the southwest corner of the village. So when development comes in that we are aware of, should we just automatically make them extend it to the end of their property? And the
Yeah,
next
and
one
that-
after that, and the next one after that.
And that's pretty much what we've done in the past, including when we even took it across the way for Grace and everything else. It was forced to go to the end of their property for that very reason. But as we come back up Lannon Road and head towards Appleton Avenue, you've created that branch back to start creating that development that goes then to the west. Doesn't mean it has to happen, but you're doing it for two reasons. One is because you want the loop, and secondly is it makes more sense for the sewer district in itself to go back and then push up towards that force main that then heads down toward, towards the big, their big receptor down on Appleton and 145. So I think you're going to go back that way anyways, and you'll probably have another lift station or something that's going to have to offset that because we already know the limitations that we have as we start going to the, to the south and to the east. There's only so much that it can take. We're limited at County Line and Appleton Avenue. That lift station is limited. And then we also know that we have some issues at Old Farm Lift Station that cannot take all of that. So there'll have to be some considerations as you're building that back and allowing something that's going to be pushed in from what you've set there. Those are decisions for futures. But I do think it's going to be a little bit higher density because that also helps support commercial. And I think it also, if this builds out to be a true Willow Creek business district, it also supports employees.
Right. Sets up the area to the west as potentially residential development sooner rather than later. Right now, if you were to turn to the last sheet in this packet that I gave you, what I did is I blew up the notes that are referred to in the matrix, the far right column. And for these neighborhoods that are outside the sewer service area, right now, the way this is set up, it provides for both. It essentially says, for example, the Willow Creek and the Amy Bell neighborhoods, they should both say, see notes 2 and 3. So that note 2, if an area in the Amy Bell neighborhood is served with water and sewer, then you could have up to 3.5 units per acre with a conservation subdivision. Under note 3, if development occurs when there's not sewer and water available, like it currently is, and it's outside of the sewer service area, then you can get 1 unit per 5 acres if you're just creating a single parcel. Or if you develop a conservation subdivision with 5 or greater lots, you could develop that at a density of 1 unit per 3 acres. So those are the allowances for these areas. It's sort of we'll do both, almost like it depends on when you come forward and you want to develop your property. If you do it before there's water and sewer, the best you can do is 1 unit per 3 acres if you do a conservation subdivision. Otherwise, you're limited to splitting off 5-acre pieces like you currently can do.
What if I want to come in and
Sewer.
Well, then you'd have to be on sewer.
Yeah.
And then you're allowed, under the current scenario, up to 3.5 units per acre with a conservation subdivision, which is that RS6 density, 12,500 square foot average size lots. So using treetops is probably a good example. Treetops, Prairie Glen, you can do one of those with water and sewer in these areas if it's available.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if you come in tomorrow and want to split off some land, the best you can do is 5-acre lots.
Okay.
And that's what the plan accommodates. Now, some would argue, well, if you're going to plan for water and sewer, then don't let the area develop into 5-acre pieces and get all fractured.
We should, that's, we
That's-
don't have
that's
that kind of power. We don't own the land.
That's the
So,
dilemma.
right, that's all up to the landowner and whoever comes forward to make the offer that they either accept or not.
Right.
and tell these people, like, here's our intent of this water spurring out here.
Right. So go talk to your neighbors, and if you want higher density, and you package up with your neighbors and you approach a developer and they come and then they get involved in extending the water and sewer. So this is the concept that applies to all of these, the Amy Bell, the Willow Creek, the Meeker Hill, the Woodside, the Rockfield, the Isabel Farms, and the Dinesville subdivisions, or neighborhoods. All of the rest of the neighborhoods on our list are areas that are outside of the existing sewer service area entirely or mostly.
I like the options.
So those are the options.
Because you handle both sides of that argument. Well, what if you don't want to? Well, then you can build your 1 for 5. But you have to also plan for the future. You don't know what it's going to be in 15 years, 20 years.
Sewer to go through. Sewer does go.
Yeah, points of direction. I like that.
So that, without getting into all the details, and given the time, I don't think we need to at this point. We can clean the rest of this up a little bit, and you'll get a chance to look at it again. But that's the basic concept, and frankly, that was the most important thing that I wanted to get some confirmation on, was that this concept, this hybrid, you can do this now, or you can wait and do this later, is acceptable.
Mhm.
Now, we don't have to talk about it tonight. We can add it to the next list. But the one big area that's hanging out there is the rural preservation area.
Mhm.
We've taken what currently is the old, north of Freistadt, the best you can do is 5 acres.
Mhm.
Well, that applied under the current plan, north of Freistadt for the most part, and also the southwest corner of the village, which not too many people really realized.
No, I didn't.
It's sort of this, that's part of the village? Thought that was Richfield. So we've dealt with that, but when you look at the rural preservation area, the real rural preservation area that we're, under this plan, making great strides to try and protect from division and development,
Mhm.
that's where the policy gets more complicated, not more complicated, it's different.
It's a different battle.
It's an entirely different battle, and for there, it's that note number 1 on the note sheet. That in the green rural preservation area, if you want to create individual lots by CSM, it's a 20-acre lot, minimum parcel size, or if you do a conservation subdivision, you can get 1 per 5.
It's going to be a battle. But, at the same time, the surveys back it up, where they like the rural feel. You don't want to spoil our rural character. You like the difference of parts of Germantown being very rural and other parts being very urban. And how else are you going to preserve it unless you don't prepare for the future of how it develops? If you leave it for 5 acres, then it's all going to be 5-acre parcels all the way across.
So this is a significant stick in the process. I guess the carrot is you can still get 1 per 5 like you could under the 2020 plan, but now you have to pre-plan work with the village and pre-plan a subdivision. And maybe it's not that you create 5 lots right away. Maybe it's you create a build-out plan for those 5 lots or 6 lots or however many you can fit on your property. And we show where a cul-de-sac can serve, where the open space and the common area is going to be. And then you split off 1 lot, be sold, next year, and another one a few years later, and another one a few years later after that, to generate the retirement income or whatever it is that you desire. But the heavy stick is you're not splitting off for residential purposes anything smaller than 20 acres unless you're going to pre-plan and build a conservation subdivision approach to it. That's going to be a hard sell.
And do we still go with Is that institutional? Oh, that said industrial. Institutional is acceptable, I guess, to some degree. But everything else is pretty well shut down, except for the residential and whatever exists. No industrial. And what, there's two parts of that, in regards to the rural argument, the conservation, and at the same time, it is our largest area of, of the, of the environmental corridor is there. That's the biggest portion of it. Going down into where the river really starts to form and become some, more of an established waterfront than it does up here, where it's still all very squishy and marshy.
Right. So you think about that. It's going to be a difficult task, I think. And we just need to be prepared to respond to the questions and the reasons why. Why can't I get 1 5-acre lot like, could a few years ago or my neighbor did? The answer is you still can. You just need to do a little bit more work and pre-plan how the rest of your property can develop. Now, I wasn't here at the time, but I know the arguments. The density and lot size used to be 20 acres before the 2020 plan was adopted. And there was a lot of pressure, from what I understand, to change that to allow for more dense development. And ultimately, the decision was to just go with the 5-acre lot size, 5-acre density provision. I would imagine there's going to be a lot of pressure to retain that just the way that it is in some fashion.
You need to answer the survey differently, because if you're looking to preserve the rural character, you will not for the long term. It's true.
Yep, that's very true. We have a situation right now where, without getting too specific, we have a subdivision lot owner position their house with the open space area behind it, and they're talking about it as if it's their own backyard. It's that attitude that's very prevalent in communities like ours. Just have to deal with it. So, I at this point, I have nothing else to say, other than I would like to meet again in a couple of weeks and go through the shorter list of the districts, which are a little bit more exciting. Gateway District, the Freistadt District, some of our other business districts, things that are, in some ways are already built out. So some of that'll go pretty quickly. I don't think we'll need to spend as much time as we did tonight, but we do need to lock in on a couple of things. Give some more thought to that Holy Hill Gateway District. If you look at the social pinpoint site and the comments that we received, that area received the most in terms of the sheer number of comments. And there was one particular comment that got 31 thumbs up, and that was, don't extend industrial east to Goldendale. So, we've been talking about it for a long time. We've drawn up and looked at a bunch of plans, but that's going to face a lot of opposition as well.
That's fine.
So,
Jeff, real quick, you said you would accept comments, our comments on these
yeah.
draft. When would you want those by?
Next couple of weeks, by the time we meet next would be helpful.
All right.
So I've got a number of things I want to get over to the consultant and have them start making some changes.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions for the Community Development Department? New business, item B. Any announcements? No announcements? Then we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all for watching, and have a good night.